You are listening to the Successful Chic Podcast, Episode 18, How to Tune In to Those You Serve When Markets Are Changing Big Time, with my guest, the Idea Queen, Randi Skinner, the head of Ideas That Don't Suck. Hello, 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 and welcome to the Successful She podcast. I am delighted to have you here today. I'm Dorothy Kuhn, and with me is the wonderful Randi Skinner. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about her in a moment. And, the whole point of this podcast is to help you overcome shocked response syndrome and transform yourself, and in this case, your business, for our business pivot series that we're doing here to transform you, your business, your situation from stewing, shouting, shrinking, or shunning what does not serve you, your mission in life, and even from the thoughts that are running around your head that can disrespect you and other people around you, so that you leave shocked response syndrome behind and transform so you can stand up for yourself, for other people, for your ideas, for the future that your soul is carrying for you, and with confidence, fun, and respect for yourself and other people in your life, driving the results that you want, because honestly, you deserve it. So with me today is the wonderful Randi Skinner, marketing and idea strategist. And she and her husband are the wonderful and happy parents of Easton Marie, who's 14 months old and adorable. So Randi,
Thank
tell us a little
you.
more about you.
Sure. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me come on. I always love to talk about ways that we can pivot as business owners. Obviously, given everything going on around us, it's even more timely. But I run my own marketing agency, RS Consulting, and I work primarily with small business owners to help them have creative ways to tell their story, or maybe just find some solutions when it comes to having limited marketing dollars or time to have a good ROI. And so that's what I spend my work life doing. And then the other side of it, I basically chase around a 1-year-old. So, I stay busy.
I remember those days. Indeed.
Sure.
And so what led you to do this kind of work? What pulled you forward?
Oh man. So I it's funny because I'm sure I'm not alone in this, that when you look at what you're doing now, you're like, I've found, I'm like, well, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But I definitely look back and I'm like, every door that opened got you here, right? Because it wasn't where I saw myself. Uh, I felt like at some point I would run my own business or do something that was my own, but
Mhm.
I didn't really know what it was. And so the way that I got here is I had always been, my background's in sales. So I've always been in sales and very much like relationship marketing.
Right.
And so when I was looking to move back to Denton, I just started reaching out to companies that I was interested in working for, and fell into the marketing world and worked
Mhm.
with a couple of local marketing agencies for some years, and just really fell in love with it, and was able to take my skill set when it comes to selling and building a relationship with a prospect, and put that together with really cool tools that we have these days, which is digital marketing.
Right.
And, digital marketing, back when I was in college, I went to UNT, that was not a class that we could take.
Right.
So now there's so many, digital marketing aspects that we can go and you can actually get a degree there. But then it was more of just being self-taught and reading and immersing yourself and looking at what everybody else is doing and trying just to soak it all up. And so it was one of those things that I was like, man, this comes in a weird way kind of naturally for me. And it's something that is exciting and brings in creativity and data and problem solving. And so I just really fell in love with marketing. And after I had my daughter, I was like, well, what better time than now to have my own business and be able to make it my own. And so I feel like when I really look back, I think that she really gave me kind of that push to be bold.
Yes.
And my husband, whenever I was thinking about starting my own business, he's very practical, And he was like, well, the way I see it is you might as well do it now, because we're not going to get older and become like more about taking risks. I was like, well, that's probably true. Like, I feel like, you kind of like start taking less risks. So it's like,
Mhm.
well, if not now, then when?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Indeed. Well, good for you, and you're wonderful at it. And one of the things that marketing is so important for in a downturn like we're having in the time of coronavirus here is really, that very human struggle that particularly local business owners have, of how do I conserve cash and be ever present as well. How can I make the best use of my funds so that I can make money, through a difficult time and position myself to thrive on the other side? And the best companies in the world have had exactly that meta strategy for getting through other big economic downturns, no matter what the cause. So, what do you have to? What's your thought on how business owners should be thinking about this time?
Sure. So I love this concept of thriving, and actually right when all this started happening, I just felt really led to talk more about that, and I wrote a blog post that was really about, we don't just have to survive right now, we can actually thrive. And it certainly may look different than what we had planned for, our Q2 to look like, and we may not be focusing on all the revenue that we're going to bring in, but what are some of the soft benefits that maybe we could bring in, and what's something that we could build that maybe you haven't had the time to do prior to now? Because assuming you may have more time on your hands, I don't think we're less busy. That's not the right word.
Right.
We're still just as busy. It's just different things are taking our time. And so I feel like there's a huge opportunity for businesses. Maybe there's so many free things when it comes to marketing. Now
Hmm.
your time is not free, but being that you might have a little more of it, now's a great time to invest in some of those free marketing tools. I mean, if you still have marketing budget, which a lot of businesses are not pulling their marketing budget because they know that that's something that's going to help them to keep the momentum and grow after.
Exactly.
But as small businesses, that may have not been in our budget to begin with, and it should be. So when, we get rolling again, you should go back to your plan and, make sure there's some money in there for it. But sitting down, and I think there's two really key areas that businesses could put their time into, and that's one, going back to their current customers or past customers,
Hmm.
and really cultivating that relationship and figuring out what could you be providing to your customer base
Right.
right now
Uh-huh.
that would add value to them.
Right.
And I think when we look at businesses that are really doing well right now, it's the way that they've been communicating with their audience, right? So I
Yes.
think that's a huge win. And that would be, there's so many things you can do, whether it's
Hmm.
picking up the phone, utilizing social media, maybe creating some really great email content. None of those cost a dollar.
Right. Right. They take creativity and time,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and the gumption to get up and do it.
Right? You just have to, that's the greatest fail that happens for someone in anything. They just
Mhm.
don't do it.
They just don't do
We
it.
get in our own way.
Yeah, we do. And that is that whole mindset thing that we were talking about before we hit the live button here. It's really,
Yes,
when we are in fear, it's hard for us to see opportunity.
for
And
sure.
and when you can build, and this is a big part of what I help people do, and I'm sure you do too, because it's so essential to being able to create a future that you want, is to hold it, so that you can see it, you can feel it, you can smell it. And that is something that will absolutely pull you forward, as opposed to being stuck kind of back on your heels, which doesn't serve anybody.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think mindset is a huge part of it. And, I think it's also, especially with everything being so unknown, I know for myself, and I'm sure other people, our anxiety is naturally triggered. Even if you're someone that maybe hasn't struggled with anxiety. I mean, look, if you look around right now, you might be feeling a little anxious about things. Maybe it's a new feeling for you. I don't know. But that balancing of our emotions, right? It can get in the way of accomplishing our goals. And so it is important that we acknowledge how we're feeling and look at, like, there are outside circumstances, but they don't have to define everything that we're doing. It's not, we don't, just because we're waiting to figure out what the next step is, doesn't mean we literally have to sit and wait.
Right.
So figure
You can
out what's
try things.
one thing.
Yeah.
Yes, what's one thing we could do? Maybe it's, listening to a new podcast to gain some insight on thriving, right? Like, here's
Mhm.
a good one to listen to.
Write it
Maybe
down.
maybe it's reading a new book, or finding a new mentor, someone that you respect, and reaching out to them and asking them what they're doing. Or from a marketing perspective, go back and really spend some time on defining your brand and defining your target audience, so
Mhm.
that when you're ready to take a little bit of action, you've done some additional work that maybe you hadn't done before.
Mhm. Oh, and that is so important. I know I've been dialing into who my ideal clients are, and it was a long road for me to get there. But when you stick that landing, you're in. You're just on your dime there, and it's super powerful to do.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's absolutely great, and it's so essential in a time like this to be able to do that, so that any marketing that you do organically, or with help, that is something that you can do, like fully aligned with who you are as the business owner, and that is a
Yes.
wonderful place to be.
Yes. Yeah.
So what would you suggest? What's an area of our local economy here in North Texas that you have been thinking, this is an area where businesses could pivot to something and really do well? Like last week, Amber and I were talking about her pivot to online,
Mm-hmm.
and having
Mm-hmm.
the online massage
Yes.
studio.
So smart. I love that.
Hmm.
Yes, the Pantheon model.
Yes.
So, I mean, obviously, I think Amber's is such a great example, because she's not someone that truly had like a product or service that you could sell online. And so, she got creative and she figured out what's something she could package up
Mhm.
and sell online at the
Right.
end of the day,
Mm.
which for her, it's self-care videos and massaging at home videos, right? And so I would say that same concept can apply across the board, no matter what kind of business we're in.
Mhm.
What is your area of expertise? How can you turn that into
Right.
an ebook or a webinar or an
Mhm.
online course, or as simple as maybe you turn it into an email newsletter subscription and folks pay you
Mhm.
every month. I have loved seeing how creative everybody has become. And at the end of the day, there were so many businesses that did not have an online presence that now do.
Mhm.
And they have pivoted, and they're selling something
Mhm.
online. And
Indeed.
so that's just kind of where we needed to be anyways, right?
Mhm.
So it's obviously not the way that we wanted to get this push, but I think
Yeah.
it's really allowed for a lot of businesses that have been thinking about it to figure out how to actually make it happen.
Yeah, it's like being the
And then
the the kid that, wants to jump in the pool but hasn't, and yada, da, 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 and then all of a
yes.
sudden, it's just like somebody pushed you in and it's time to
Hmm.
swim.
That's right. And so, what can you sell online, right? And if that's not an option, then something else that someone could be doing right now is creating their leads list. So, who are the businesses, or if you're B2B, it's businesses, if you're B2C, individuals, right? Who is it that you want to be reaching out to?
Mhm.
Because it is an okay time to begin building new connections and building
Yes.
relationships. And
Mhm.
at the end of the day, when you're talking about a sales cycle or your sales process, you don't just walk into a networking event and start pitching what you're selling. you
Yeah.
build a relationship. And
Mhm.
so that can be happening right now.
Mhm.
So connecting with folks on social media and
Mhm.
really honing in on identifying
Mhm.
your target audience
Right.
and creating a new leads list and begin
Right.
begin building connections and,
Mhm.
going online and really cultivating a new leads list. Those are two very profitable things that will have huge ROI at the end of the day.
Yes. Indeed. And one of the things that I've got on my list to do, because I have got like 5,000 people in my phone. And, I need to just reach out to each and every one of those people, a few a day, and check in with them and see how they're doing. What do they need? What's working for them? What's not? And so
Sure.
that's next up on my list. And everybody can do that, because what you have is something that other people will need, or they'll know someone who needs what
Hmm.
you have. And being able to uh, del- deliver, like in just a few seconds, what it is that you do to refresh people you haven't spoken with in a long time is, and in a way that's really engaging. It's all about the value and not about what you do. I mean, people don't really care what you do; they care what it does for them, right?
Hmm. Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So the care calls is the lingo that I've been hearing. And we've seen a lot of realtors that have started doing that. And then I
Mhm.
know a lot of membership based organizations like the Denton Chamber, Denton Benefit League here locally. That's the method that they've been taking. And I think that's so smart, right? It's
Mhm.
not only is it, making sure that you're keeping that relationship fresh, it's letting the people that you care about know that you care about them.
Yeah.
And having that just a quick phone call, it's so much more impactful than an email, right? Or a text. It's picking up the phone. And if nobody answers, I'm terrible at answering the phone. I prefer a text. So when you do my care call, just text me if I don't answer.
Right. And I think that's pretty much the way we did it when I reached out for you on this, right?
Yeah, pretty much, yes.
Oh, it is great. It is great. And so once people have identified what their pivot can be, some form of being online, because we need to be physically separated these days.
Hmm.
I hope everybody's doing that. It's I see some people. There always a remnant who are thinking that life is like it used to be, but it's not. And I don't want the elders in my family to be. They're the ones who are really at risk, and the little tiny ones, and I don't want any of them to be affected by this. So I'm going to do everything I can to be a good team player. It's team
Hmm.
humanity time.
Team humanity, I like it.
So what do you advise these owners when they're struggling, when they can't quite make themselves do it?
Man, so it's hard when things are going our way. And so I think the very first thing is to pick one thing.
Mhm.
Don't try and climb this mountain when it comes to marketing, and don't try and focus on everything that you don't have right now,
Right.
right? It's very easy for us to focus on and live in more of a scarcity focus versus what is something that you could accomplish this week?
Mm-hmm.
What's something you could accomplish today?
Mm-hmm.
And that what's something that kind of comes naturally. Don't go make yourself, right now is not when you need to be doing the stuff that like you can't even wrap your head around. That's don't do
You
create your
gotta
list
have
and
stress.
yes, have some quick wins.
Yeah.
I think the same thing applies. Parents are all homeschooling, right? And
Mm-hmm.
your classes are online, and there's been so much of a conversation going on about, maybe just kind of be a little more lax these days. Don't feel like you have to keep this like very specific schedule, and you're not trying to do schoolwork in a full entire day. It's a couple hours here or there. And so I think that same mentality applies for us as business owners.
Mhm.
You know, we can be a little more lax, have some grace and forgiveness for ourselves where we're at, and figure out what's one or two quick wins that
Right.
we can have.
Uh-huh.
Because the way that it works, right? The way our brains work, when we have some quick wins, we begin to think, hey, that big old thing at the top of the mountain doesn't seem so far away now.
I could do
So
this.
yes, like I think maybe I could do this. So, you know, wake up and do something that sounds exciting and fun
Mhm.
first when it comes to your business.
And
Don't go do the boring, terrible thing
yes,
first.
indeed. And another thing that has been extraordinarily effective for me is at night, I jot down like 2 or 3 things that I want to accomplish for the next day before noon.
So that you already have your
I've
list.
already
Yep.
got I've already got my list. And how our brains work is that when you put that in your brain as you're going to sleep, and just, you write it down, it's on the nightstand. And when you do, your brain will automatically, without you even noticing, being able to kind of do the pre-work, the prep work, so that you can just fly through that stuff so much easier than if you got up in the morning and asked yourself, well, what am I going to do today? Right?
Yeah. Yes. Planning. Got a plan.
And definitely got a plan. So
Yes.
once for those, let me see. We've identified their pivot. And that pivot is largely to some kind of online presence that is bigger than what they've done. How can people, there's so many social platforms these days. How can people easily find out? Do you have a blog post on how people can find out uh, uh, which of those social medias, maybe the top one or two? Um,
Sure. So um, I I don't have a blog post specifically about that, but I do talk about that often. And and if that's something that somebody's wanting to figure out, I'm happy to do a complimentary consultation to help them figure that out. But here's what I can tell you. To figure out which social media platforms are going to make the most sense for you, you have to have done the work on your target audience, right? So you have to know who they are, who
right.
is it that you're trying to reach out to,
Right.
and then take that information and go and do some research on the different social media platforms.
Mhm.
The kind of easy low hanging fruit is typically going to be age. That's one. You know, a lot of if you're targeting more of a younger demographic, Snapchat's more relevant. If you're targeting an older demographic, Facebook's more relevant. And really, Facebook is still relevant across the board. It's
Mhm.
the number one network at this point. And then if you're targeting businesses, LinkedIn is obviously going to be a great B2B kind of connection source.
Mhm.
So figuring out who that audience is and then doing a little bit of research on demographics. I have a report that I am happy to provide to anybody that would like to reach out, that I'll share with them to tell them more about that. That's one of the things that we do when we're creating a strategy, is figure out where it makes sense to spend their time.
Mhm.
But for the most part, Facebook, I love Facebook. I think it's so powerful. And it's been hard for me to find one business that it doesn't make sense for them to spend some time there.
I get that.
And and then the second, other than LinkedIn, if you're B2B, Instagram has really been having a lot of success, especially for those in retail or selling something online. The way that we're able to, as users, to connect with brands through Instagram
Mhm.
really increases just the overall buying power and the overall relationship. It's more of a brand and engagement focused communication versus Facebook, that's kind of a little bit more of like telling versus having more of a you know conversation in a sense. But yeah, so really think about your target audience, and then just if you did nothing else, just go and look at kind of the age range of who you're targeting and what you have time to do. So if you're don't feel like you need to go do them all at once.
Yeah, one at a time
Yeah.
is a good strategy. Otherwise, it will be hard to separate the subtleties between them. and you'll
Yes.
overwhelm yourself. So those are two things to avoid.
Yes. And when you do decide to go to social, the number one thing that you could hone a skill in it right now would be live video.
Yes.
And most people don't do it because
Mhm.
it's very hard and it feels vulnerable and it feels overwhelming. But all of those platforms have a live video function that we
Mhm.
just spoke about. And if you can master that for yourself and for your business, you're
Uh-huh.
going to be able to build momentum greater than those around you. And the good news is, if you go live, not to sound terrible, but you ain't so important that everybody's tuning in all at once to see your live video, right?
Right.
A lot of times live videos, they get seen over time, right?
Right.
So it's okay if you aren't that great at it in the beginning. And if you say something that you're like, man, I shouldn't have said that, you can just delete the video. So I think it's very easy. So set a goal. I suggest if you're somebody that is new to it, just set a goal that you're going to go live from your Facebook page or wherever once a week.
Mhm.
And every week, do that. And even if you're just going live to tell your customers and your clients, hang in there. You know, we're doing great. Y'all, we're going to make it. We're so excited to see you guys again when all this is over. If that's the
Mhm.
only thing you say every single week, that's okay.
That's okay. And I've
That's
been doing
okay.
that. It's really turned out to be a lot of fun. So,
Yes.
in the evenings, right before I'm headed to bed, I do the, day whatever it is for the Coronavirus Chronicles. And, I tell some story that is, related to the work I do to, help people.
Sure.
Help them turn
Yes.
into the version of themselves that they've always wanted to be, whether that's in their business or their personal lives or how they relate to their family members and friends. It makes just a huge difference to be able to be yourself, because everything in the world will push us in a way to be something that is like somewhere else on media, or a
Mm-hmm.
famous person, and that's not most of us.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, this has been absolutely great. And I know that you are really instrumental in helping Amber uh, make her pivot. And, glad to be a small part of that as well. And she is having a wonderful interview today with somebody out of New York with a big, big audience. So, she's just knocking it out. And guess what, dear listeners and viewers, you can too. So how do people get a hold of you, Randy?
Sure. So my website is ideasthatdon'tsuck.com. And yes, and you can find me on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn. Facebook and Instagram are through my business, RS Consulting, Ideas That Don't Suck. And then LinkedIn, of course, just look for me, Randi Skinner. But my website, you can connect with me there, ideasthatdon'tsuck.com. If I can help you solve any of your marketing woes or just spend, 30 minutes brainstorming or helping you figure out what social media platform makes sense, connect with me. I have a contact form or my email is available. So I would love to help anybody kind of jump over this hurdle and start climbing that mountain and building some momentum.
And Randy will do a great job for you. I know she's done it for so many organizations and businesses
Thank
here
you.
in North Texas, and her level of creativity and just a real heart of service is
Thank you.
extraordinary. So make sure and reach out to her, and I will have that link in the show notes, so
Great.
you can grab it there. So thanks so much, Randy. And what was that other thing? Oh, I was talking about the restaurant supply chain
Yes.
for food. You want to talk about that for like 1 or 2 minutes?
Sure.
Yeah. So go ahead. What's your thought
Well,
on
I think so. What we were talking about is this idea of if we can have more businesses locally, more restaurants locally get creative with how they're getting their food now
it?
and turning it into something that is more consumer friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And, Chestnut Tree is such a phenomenal example here in Denton of someone that has done that. She's taken her restaurant supply food, right, that she's able to get, I believe, through the various, restaurant focused businesses, but and turned it into a market. And so she was a cafe only before, and now she has an entire online market where you can go and shop for everything from grapes and watermelon, or even wine if you need to, although Wine Squared is where I suggest going for wine too. But so it's everything that you could think of when it comes to essentials. And
Mm-hmm.
so she's really passed that on to the community. And I know that has really given a lot of peace of mind for many folks. I know for
Yeah.
myself it has, right? To know where where my next grocery list, right, is going to come from.
Mm-hmm. And that is so important. And you all, just so you know a little bit of the backstory on this, as a really great opportunity for any restaurateur you happen to know. Know if it's a big chain, they're probably not going to do this. But if it's a locally owned restaurant, it's a real upside opportunity for them, and to be able to do something very similar to what Chestnut Tree has done, because the food that goes to grocery stores is one supply chain, and the food that goes to restaurants is a different supply chain. It's and those things do not meet in the middle. They're very different in packaging. Like, you can buy cheese at the grocery store, you buy 8 ounces in a plastic bag. Well, restaurants buy cheese and it's like, a big block of cheese. So and that variation in scale makes it really hard. Uh, and this food over here for the restaurants is just sitting fallow, and it's not going to last forever. And then the farmers who supply that, what are they going to do with what they're producing now when nothing is moving through that supply chain? And so it's a win-win for our restaurants. And oh gosh, that would be people and restaurants and the distributors and the farmers. That's a
Everybody.
way win to be able to do that. So I'm going to be reaching out to some of our restaurants to see, if we can't do those kind of brainstorming sessions to get them going on that. And Randy, if you want to partner on that, I'm game for it too, because I think we're better together.
Always better together.
Always better together. So anyway, you all find a way to make life better for people. Business is all about solving problems that people have and can't solve on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Randy. This has been absolutely wonderful. I had a ton of fun, and I can't wait to see the great stuff that comes out of all the great work that you're doing and that we might be doing together. Who knows?
Thank you so much, Dorothy. I've had fun chatting. I always love to talk about marketing, businesses, and how we can thrive. So I really appreciate you having me on.
It is a pleasure to have you. You are top notch in my book. Thanks, and we will see you
Thank
all
you.
next time. Hold on. Before you go anywhere, I want to make sure you know how much I appreciate your listening ear on the Successful She podcast. And as such, I want you to know that I don't only want to make a difference here to you on the podcast weekly, but actually I want to be in there with you in your business, in your life, every single day, helping you overcome the things that other people can shock you with, so you can avoid shocked response syndrome and transform from stewing, shouting, shrinking, or shunning those people who don't respect or appreciate you, those situations that get in your way and even stop you, so that instead you'll be standing up for yourself with confidence, respect, and fun, and drive the results you want and honestly that you deserve. So I want to invite you to our free Successful She community of practice for you, the woman who knows there's more for you in your business, in your personal life, and in your social life. It's an invite-only free online community of high-level women achievers, and this is where you can get ongoing trainings and interactions with me where you can learn and grow with like-minded influencers and thought leaders, share best practices, and of course, get monthly micro trainings and book recommendations from me and my team. So our members range from women who own and lead businesses, professional women, to women who lead in your community, family, and movements. We would so benefit from having you, and we know you will get so much value out of this group as well, especially if you really appreciate what I bring you on the show. So if you do, head on over to dorothykuhn.com/community. That's where you'll have the opportunity to join the Successful She community of practice we hosted on Facebook. So go to dorothykuhn.com/community, answer a couple of questions, and then request the invite. We'll check you out and can't wait for you to join us inside our group. Thank you for listening. Success will be yours.